Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, August 15, 2017 City Council adjourned meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Albertson, absent. Bueller?
Here.
Danforth?
Here.
Lallam?
Here.
Roby?
Here.
Solom?
Here.
Thorson, absent. Vilhauer?
Here.
Y, absent. Thank you.
The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion and second to approve the agenda? Moved by Bueller, second by Vilhauer. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes. Item 2, presentation, review, and public input on mayor's proposed 2018 city budget. Preliminary budget book available on the city website or a paper copy available in the finance office for review. The first topic is BBB sales tax fund.
Okay, just for a couple points of order, anybody who has the preliminary budget book printed or has viewed it, just a brief introduction to that. The first part of the book is basically the only part or the only place you'll find the detail of the revenue sections for each fund. Because we have so many different departments, it's hard to put the revenues in with the expenditures without copying them a lot of time and wasting some paper. So all of the revenues in detail, there's little snippets of it within each of the word pages, but you'll find the detail in the first part. The second part is the departments that we're going to review this evening. And the third part will be all of the departments except for the airport that we will be doing tomorrow night. Because of operational necessity, the airport will be discussed this evening so that Todd can be present because he will not be able to be present tomorrow night. So that is just one little change that we have for this evening. How this will work is that each department will come up and they will make a brief 5 to 6 minute presentation. If you could wait to ask any questions until they're completed with their presentation, it will allow them to finish in a timely manner. It will also allow them to get out what they want to have out and not get delayed or off track. Also, with time, we will end this at 9:30, just for the sake of putting in a long day and having another one tomorrow night. So please make sure that you have your questions prepared. Listen to the questions. Try not to make the same comment or ask the same question twice so that we just can make sure that it keeps moving along. At any time, the public is welcome to ask any questions, make any comments at any point. If you could please, if you have a question or comment that you need to make, you need to come up to the podium. You need to put the microphone on, and you'll see the little green dot light up. You need to state your name, and then just have a minute or two to say what your question concern is and who you're addressing it to. And then once you're done, you can go back and sit down. If there's any changes that need to be made, there needs to be a motion and a second. And at that point, Mayor, if you just want to go take back over since you're the chair of the council and ask for any discussion, and then you'll take a vote on that before we can move on to any other business. And then those changes will be incorporated into the final budget ordinance that will be on first reading on that first meeting in September. Okay, so as we go along, I'll briefly introduce the fund or department that we're going to talk about. Any comments that I have about any of that, and then the department, or on some of these first ones, anybody from the audience that's here from that organization that's being contributed to can come up at any time, and then we'll go through any presentation that you might have. Does anybody have any questions from the council?
Shelley, I do, just for point of clarification, on the second page, not including the cover page, but the second part, the objects of expenditures, under capital outlay. If I add that column up, it doesn't add up to 16,582. If I take my three totals, all the others do. I just am wondering.
Where are you looking?
If you take the capital outlay, the middle column,
Oh, okay.
you got 738,000, you got 4.9 million and 2.9 million, and the total at the bottom is 16.5.
Okay.
I
We can go back and we can go back and look at that. That's part of our entire spreadsheet that pulls everything in, so there very well could be a missing piece of data.
Okay.
I can do that and then just bring a new sheet tomorrow. Okay. So the first one that we have is the BBB Sales Tax Fund, often referred to as our bedboard booze tax. Also referred to, if you look at anything from the state, is our third penny sales tax. And you can see what the department description is. You can see, based on the codified law, when they created that additional 1% tax, what it can be used for. And so it has to have its own separate fund, and we comply with the state statute on what it can be used for. So I think we'll go just through the first section. The first page here is just kind of the Word document. Just gives you a little snippet, and it gives you, we request a budget from the CVB because the city does contribute the majority of that budget. And so we do ask for just kind of a breakdown of how that's going to be used. If you turn the page, the very first section of that basically deals with the event center. So on the first one, on the equipment maintenance, that you'll see that we offset that $50,000 with a transfer from the general fund. So basically the third penny sales tax is not paying for the maintenance at the event center. The general fund first penny is paying for that. It is a city-owned building, and that's the agreement that's been made. The rest of it is just basically the utilities and the cable service for that. If you go down to the second section, that's where you'll get into the external organizations that we pass through some of the sales tax revenue to. The first one on that city promotion, that 40,000 of that is okay. I left my paper on my desk, so now I'm not going to get it. 40,000 is yes for the retail strategies. That's a 3-year contract that's renewable every year. So that will come back before you to be renewed in 2018, just like it was in 2017. It's put in here with the anticipation that that is something that you want to continue doing and continue supporting. So that's something that 90,000, you need to make sure that that's something that you still do want to support. The other is the second half of that $100,000 commitment with Ryan, and so that's also in there.
Yeah, GPS out of Sioux Falls.
Yes.
Ryan Query.
Yep, because 50,000 of it will come out in 2017, and that's the budget for the other 50,000. So that makes up that $90,000. The second line is the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and you can see their history. You can see where they've been budgeted, and they're asking for a $5,000 increase. All the other line items are line items that are either billed to or requested by the chamber. So, and there has been no change from the previous year. So the 4th of July, billboard rentals for the city, advertising, downtown decorations, or I guess any city decorations for banners or whatever. The mayor's ad campaign, which is advertising for the city. And then the $40,000 is basically just a contribution to the Chamber of Commerce, and they can spend it for whatever purposes they wish. We've never asked them for a breakdown on how they spend that $40,000. The last one is the flower project. That's the $5,000 that gets put in for the Highway 81 flowers. The subsidy for the Boys and Girls Club, that's done by contract. Basically, how the contract reads is that they get the CPI, which is set by the state every year, that's given to us by through the county, or 3%, whichever is less. And so this year the CPI was 1%. So by contract, their amount that they received for 2018 increased 1%. And then the transfer out to the Park and Rec, that's to help offset the subsidy from the general fund. And there is no change on that one. So I think what I will do is I will go back. First of all, does anybody have any questions on the event center? Any of the costs that we incur, any of the budget that's inside the event center line items? Okay, then I will move down to city promotion. Does anybody want to have any discussion about the $40,000 and the $50,000? If you looked at the revenue section, you can see that our revenue projections do not cover the total cost that's being requested. I am a conservative person by nature, and so I increased the third penny sales tax anticipation, but it's probably still lower than how we're trending for 2017. The reason that I did that is I have some concern. This isn't trending the same way that our regular 2 penny sales tax is. And so without any really good reasons why, other than we're I don't know, we're drinking more and we're eating out more, but we're not spending any money anywhere else. I'm not sure what that is, but it's trending a lot higher. So I don't know if at some point that's going to slow itself down. If, without having a really good reason why, and I'm just not 100% sure, I get a little more nervous about whether that's going to continue to trend up or whether it's eventually going to hit a plateau and start to slow down like our other 2 penny sales tax has been. Because our other 2 penny sales tax has done better, and this was doing worse, and now we've flip-flopped. And I'm not 100% sure, and I look at things and I read things from the state, and I just can't pinpoint a good reason why there is just such a dramatic, a 10% increase over here and about a 0.5% decrease on the other side. So I wanted to keep that conservative and with the anticipation that we would exceed that. But just so that the revenue projections is right at that $50,000 short of what these total requests are at. So just like I said, I'm not really concerned about that. We have a decent fund balance in the third penny sales tax, so we can absorb that even if the sales taxes decline. But I do think that we were conservative enough that I think we can exceed that and we can be okay. But I just want to make sure that you guys have those discussions so that when those contracts come up in 2018, that you're aware of what is transpiring and that you agree with that so that there's no issues next year. So does anybody want to have any conversation? I think you're kind of locked into the additional $50,000 because that was really just a $100,000 contract you but the 40,000 that's renewable each year for 17, 18, 19. I know there's a couple new council members, and welcome. I'll put you as being here instead of absent. Do you guys want to have any discussion about that, or is everybody okay with that?
I do have a question on the retail strategies. We all supported that when it went through, but I don't know if I've heard much feedback on it lately. Does anybody have any feedback on that?
I've had some feedback as to why we're spending $40,000 outside of our community for that, but wondering if we've had any return back on that as of now.
Yeah, that's my question. Have we got any results, feedback, or trending results? I haven't heard anything.
Just to jump in here, as you may recall, Randy Tupper and Beth Manti were the two council members that were involved most closely with them. I guess I'd be interested to know, neither one, Randy no longer in the council and Beth taking a leave, be interested to know what their perspective is, being closest to it as far as this group is concerned.
Who is their point of contact within the city at this point? Is really probably the bigger question, I suppose, now. Because I haven't heard anything either. Nothing.
Yeah, none of that was ever run through the finance office. I never sat in on any of the meetings or was involved with any of the reports. So I guess as far as I knew, it was kind of handled over in the mayor's office with those couple liaisons, and I don't know much past that.
Mayor, have you had anything? Have you had any discussion with you since you took over?
Nope. I haven't had any feedback.
I would say probably the next step then, Mayor, would be to probably appoint or get somebody to volunteer to be the point person for that. And just so everybody knows too, there was for you new folks, there was a lot of discussion. There were several meetings that we met with various groups that would provide this type of service. And so there was careful selection that went into that whole process. And I don't believe there's anybody locally that would be able to provide the services that they were. In fact, everybody I think that we looked at was from out of town. So just kind of a little heads up on how we got to where we're at. But yeah, we definitely need to make contact with them.
Can I suggest that what we do on that one is that we just defer that response until maybe even tomorrow, if somebody could do a follow-up with them to get some information as to what has occurred to date and what the plan is going forward and timelines. I think we do need to get that update before we can agree to continue to spend money. So,
well, I guess, to expedite the process, couldn't we preliminarily leave it in the budget because we can, back out if we don't want to continue, but then get the feedback and at some point near future down the road, but not hold this process up.
You hate to wrangle them before they've had time to really reach fruition if you're believing in what they can do.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a fruition issue. I think it's a communication issue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can go months without hearing as a council from them. We need to have an ongoing dialogue that comes to us as to what they're doing.
But I don't think we need an answer by tomorrow evening. Is my point, Mike.
Yeah, I don't care how we do it. We do have the ability to pull that if we're not happy, but we do need to have an ongoing dialogue.
Yep. And again, anything in the budget, just because it's in the budget doesn't mean it has to be spent. But it is something that is committing, funds coming in next year up until the point where you say no, and then it just kind of goes away and becomes available funds.
At any point before we approve the budget, it could get pulled.
It depends. I don't have my lawyer here to... Okay, so here's the deal. State statute says that between first and second reading, any substantive changes need an additional reading. We don't have that time unless we schedule a special council meeting. State statute says we have to have a budget ordinance approved no later than September 30 with our sales tax by October 1 to the county. So that second meeting, there can't be any substantive changes now I will leave it up to our attorney to say whether a $40,000 expenditure being pulled is a substantive change. But I would be a little careful about that. If you can get information prior to that coming to the council for first reading, I'm very comfortable with that. If Justin is still here or his replacement is comfortable with saying that that is not a substantive change, then if you want to pull it at that time, you can sure do that. Otherwise, you can leave it in up until the point where you do not feel comfortable continuing on with the contract. Because, like I said, another one's is gonna come. They're gonna want a renewal. They're gonna want to continue the relationship, and that will come back before this governing body, and you're gonna have to make a decision one way or the other with that.
Shelley, we could leave it in there, but then at some point in time,
Not renew.
not renew the contracts. I think the question is, what's the date we have to renew the contract? That's the question.
Well, like I said, I have had really nothing to do with that. It's whenever they submit that, which I'm assuming they're going to submit it to the mayor's office for renewal because they're going to want to get paid. And at that point, that renewal will need to go in front of the governing body for determination. Like I said, it doesn't hurt to have it stay in. It's just that I have to make sure that the budget is balanced and that there's money set aside for that if you so choose to use it that way. So it's there as a placeholder. But like I said, just because it's in the budget, it does not say that we are committing to that. It's just a placeholder.
Shelley, can I ask you a question? Moving to a different spot here, the mayor's ad campaign. You know, I see we were at budget at 52,250 for 17, and I see we're at 25,000. And apparently, that must be the mayor's projection for that. Was that mostly the Shop Watertown campaign to buy local? Is that what that money was spent for the most? Do you know?
I guess I haven't been reviewing and approving the bills that are coming from the chamber. I know I had sent an email to Megan and did not get a response. I'm wondering if some of this is being miscoded, that some of it should go under the chamber line item, because when you put the two of them together, you get a little closer to what the total budget is. Any over expenditures should actually come back through the city council for an appropriation prior to any of that being approved. And so that's it's something that I did not get an answer to, but we need to go back through and look at that. But, and I don't know, Tim is here. I don't know if you know that process, what the mayor's ad campaign is used for, how involved the mayor is with that, what you guys use those funds for.
So, yeah, from what I understand with the conversation this afternoon with Mayor Sarah, we think it could be miscoded, or it's part of the ADI funds that we don't know where those ended up.
Oh, that's right. We did earmark some of that money for. Really? Oh, okay.
Yep. So at that point, I guess I'm not sure where all that came from, but we kind of chalked up this afternoon to that. And Megan's out of town, so I can't get a hold of her. But hopefully Thursday or Friday she's back in town. We can have a conversation about and maybe learn something about that and share it back with you.
While we're on the topic, I just think that was effective. I think it's something we need to continue to do, and perhaps even more than we have in the past. And especially in the time where it is a little bit iffy sometimes on tax revenue. So moving forward, I think that's a really good idea in my opinion.
And that's something you can kind of take back. I know, every mayor's a little bit different on how they work, but I know most mayors have been involved in some conversation on how that's used, where it's used, what the ads say, what times of the year, to make sure that, that it's getting the message out that they feel is appropriate. It's just that the chamber facilitates all of those and gets those ads in there and kind of has the contracts with those radio stations, television stations, whatever, and then just bills the city back for that.
Well, I want to jump back, Bruce. Are we okay with leaving the promotions one in, and then getting some detail, so that's what we're going to do there.
Yeah, I'm
But-
good with that.
Okay. One thing that, and I'm glad Bruce brought this up, but I look at those two items that Bruce had just mentioned. You got the mayor's ad campaign and $40,000 to the chamber. And I'm going to venture a guess that we really don't know how that money is being spent. And that's too much money for us to not have a plan and detail for how that money is spent. We would require that of anybody else. I think we need to know, if we're going to give $65,000, exactly how that money is to be spent.
Shelley, Tim, I'm speaking from my experience in the chamber board. It was my understanding that the chamber does submit invoices to the city as they get reimbursed by the city.
For some. On it's changed. It's flip flopped. We used to have everything itemized, and they had to submit invoices. And then a decision was made. I'm thinking when Gary Williams might have been mayor, to just lump it into one lump sum and say, "Here's the money," and then do what you've been doing with it, but we don't need to see any detail. Then Mayor Thorson wanted to have more of that detail back, so I think last year might have been the first year that we put it back, and we split out the 4th of July, the signs for billboards to make sure that we were still getting that advertising, the decorations, and the mayor's ad campaign. What was left from that $80,000 we were giving to the chamber in one lump sum was that $40,000. And at that time, Mayor Thorson made the determination that chamber, you guys have a purpose for that, and just go ahead and ask for that, which they were doing in $20,000 chunks twice a year. And so it's really up to you guys appropriating the money. If you want some additional documentation for that $40,000, then this is the time to have that conversation so that everybody kind of knows the rules coming into 2018. If you want that to change in 2017, we can sure do that too. Like I said, we ask for a little bit more detail from the CVB because we do support the majority of that budget. So we ask for a little detail so that you as a council know where that money is going to. So it's really up to you what you guys feel comfortable doing and what direction you want to ask the chamber to go in.
Because in this number, didn't we give additional monies for the cooking on Compesca also, and that's not in here?
No, that came out of the contribution to external organization. That's out of the general fund.
Okay. I, for one, would like to understand how our money is being spent here. There's got to be a reason why we're given $65,000. I think that should be easily detailed to us as to where those funds are being used and how they're being used.
And I would agree wholeheartedly with that. And I thought it was being done more than apparently it sounded like it is because, again, going back to my experience when I was in the chamber board, the chamber does not view that as being a subsidy from the city for its operations. As far as the chamber is concerned, those are expenses being incurred for the city. Now, I was not aware that there was not a dollar for dollar invoices being submitted back for that. But so I would encourage the chamber to start doing that again if that's not being done thoroughly. But that has been my understanding over the years that the chamber can account for how those dollars are being spent.
Okay, and I can do that. I can set up a meeting with Tim and we can kind of work that out and iron that out. Okay, I see Julie's here from the CVB. So if Julie, if you want to come up and if you want to just briefly go over kind of what your plan is for 2018 and some of the budget numbers that you provided and then the revenue sources that you're going to use for that, and then we can open it up for any additional questions they have on that CVB line item.
Can you roll that down to what you have I don't know if you listed it in the same manner I did exactly.
You can grab the mouse.
Hmm?
If you want to grab the mouse and point, you probably know better where it is.
Oh, I wouldn't. Up. There. Okay. Big categories. Nobody ever said I had to have a plan. Okay, I am Julie Knutson. I'm the Executive Director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, for anybody who isn't not aware of that. We really didn't, we came in last year with a larger request. I keep threatening to ask for a lot of money, and I haven't done it yet, so I'm thinking 2019 is the year. But anyway, we have, as you can see, the health benefits and contributions and salaries. We had a sizable increase in that for 2018. We'll be bringing on, by June 1st, a full-time employee, which is long overdue. So we've got a larger expenditure there. Our office expenses are down a bit. Let's see, professional development. Is up a little bit, and that's just because of the retainer that we have with ClickRain, because we installed a CRM, a customer relationship management, and also a customer marketing manager on there as we're putting in conventions and information about tournaments and things like that. We'll be able to pull that data and market to those people as well. So the retainer is a bit more than it used to be. We're not going to buy any software this year. We are really fully loaded with whatever we need for software. Our marketing, we're changing things up a little bit. And our meetings and conventions, as you can see, we're going to take a small increase. But the thing that we are going to spend quite a bit more money in is our sports marketing. The sports tourism business is where we make a lot of our money. We've got a lot of new infrastructure here. I came in kind of in the middle of a lot of those things being built, not really having been involved in that. So I've been doing a lot more traveling, so we will do the National Association of Sports Commissions conference again this year. I handed out some marketing to you guys. We did some really hard-hitting marketing this year for the Wellness Center. We've got the new ball field now. We need to get out and get some photos taken of that. So we really need to spend some money trying to bring those tournaments in, because actually with every family that brings their kids to those tournaments, we make about 3 times as much money as we do in the third penny sales tax, and all the first 2 pennies for that matter. So that is where we're going to focus. We're going to be doing the training with our new person, and then in 2019 we want to really go full force where we have the sports tourism will be a huge focus for us once we get everything set in place. Hunting and fishing, we will still do some of those shows. I know that the mayor last year and John did a sports show, and that was paid for by the city. So we are going to put together a budget with the shows that we are going to attend and see if the Northwest Sports Show is going to be a possibility this year or not. We are signed up for Pheasant Fest this year in Sioux Falls. So shows are really, it's an expensive thing, but I think it's a very important thing. So we will be doing several shows outside the area in 2018, and we also did in 2017. Our local event marketing is our posters that we send out. It's all of the radio ads that we do, anything talking about local events regionally. That is not placed by our national advertising that the bid board pays for. So really to market our local events regionally, to bring day trippers in, not necessarily the overnighters, but the people that will come for the day for things like the fireworks, the parades, just any kind of event that we have. So what else do we have? We're going to use $28,000 of our reserves for our employee that we will be hiring. June 1st, we'll have 7 months a new employee with benefits. And then I asked for an additional $5,000 And the reason for that is we, to do the sports tourism portion of our business correctly, we would like to bring in a consultant or do some kind of legwork, trying to make sure that if, what we put together properly so that we can do it once, number one, and also just make sure that we're covering everything. We're not forgetting anything. And there's just a lot more to the sports tourism aspect. Also, our board, and I know I talked to Mayor Karen as well, we'd like to do a little digging around in millennial marketing. We've got a very different generation coming up that does things a lot differently than anyone else has in the past. They do a lot of, in travel, a lot of shared types of experiences. We're talking, and I know we're too small for Uber, but we do need to try and fine-tune our transportation options in Watertown as far as the visitor goes. Also, as far as Airbnb and things like that, we want to make sure that we have the tools for our hoteliers to make sure that they can keep up once the millennials become a larger part of the market. We don't want to be behind the 8 ball on that. We want to make sure that we're bringing people to Watertown we've got great experiences. And the thing that kind of triggered this with me was when we had Matador in town. I had a journalist here that, and a lot of you probably did see the articles that Matador did, but she is a millennial through and through, and she loved Watertown, and you have to talk to those people differently. And I think it also falls true for retail. I think it falls true for every aspect of the community. We need to make sure that we're in tune with what they want, how they want to hear it, and how they want to purchase it. So we didn't ask for a lot of money, an extra $5,000. I think that there's probably some research out there that maybe some of the universities have done that we can tap into that's not going to be real expensive. We just need to find what those avenues are. And if we run into something that we think is going to be, really good, we'll come back and talk to you all about it and see if maybe it's something we want to do to make sure that we're going the right direction as a city as a whole. So, so really just our retained earnings and of $28,000 and additional $5,000 for the CVB is all we're asking over and above what we've normally gotten.
How many employees are you going to be having then after your full-time person is hired?
Right now we have 2 full-time employees and we have a shared employee with the chamber. And so we would have 3 full-time employees. We have Tammy, who does all the servicing of all the tournaments and all of the conventions that come to town. And with my travel that I do, travel and sales, the thing that really is tripping us up is all of the sports venue that we need to fill, because that is such a moneymaker for us. And I can tell you that I filled out an RFP for a convention of outdoor writers, and it took me about 3 days to complete the whole thing. So there's a lot of time involved in getting those people in here when you're going at them from a national level. When I was at NASC, people are blown away by the amount of venue we have here, so and the quality of it. So I think we've really got a good product. I think we want to set ourselves up to succeed in that we don't ever want to think that people aren't going to want to come here because it's just Watertown because we live here. But we've got a really good product. We've got some really great venue. And so what I really want to do is get somebody trained really well so that we have somebody that can go after the sales if I'm off at a board meeting. I sit on 5 boards, so I have a lot of other responsibility that I sometimes have to take care of as well. So right now I'm doing sales of everything from leisure to sports, conventions, and then also all of my CVB responsibilities. I oversee the bid board and do all of their financials, and I sit on all of the boards that I do. So it's.
But Julie, will that end up being 3.5 people? You'll still retain the half, the shared?
Well, as long as we're in the location that we're in.
Right. So assuming that's the same, you've
Right.
got two full-time, 1 shared. You'll have 3 full-time, 1 shared.
Exactly. And the
Okay.
shared person is, you have people walking in the door and answering the phone, so it's hard to be a shared person. We try to get our 50% out, but it's just a really tough thing, but you have to have somebody answering the phone and by the door all day too, so. I would like to add too, this is our 13th month of really healthy growth. We haven't had a decline or a negative since last May, or the May before last May, 13 months ago. And I know that Shelley raised some questions, and I can reiterate too that all of the research shows when I go to conventions or to TTRA, which is a travel and tourism research convention, I went to that last year, that BBB growth is not unique to Watertown. Actually, the third penny sales tax, visitor industry, and travel is actually growing. There's a few trends that are growing kind of quickly, and I think the conventions where the person attending the convention brings their whole family because part of it's paid for and it turns into an extended stay. We've been marketing that for a while now. And also, as far as the sports teams, that is a recession-proof. I think Mike Danforth and I had that conversation once. Sports tourism is a recession-proof thing. That's the last thing that parents are going to cut out of their budget is taking their children to a sports tournament. And I think that, we just this past weekend had a couple of groups in town, and I think Watertown has just such exceptional hospitality and so many things to do when they're here that I think that we are going to, continue to grow in that area. We've got a really good culinary game in town now. We've got some award-winning culinary. We've got people competing. And we've gotten a lot of press on that as well. And, along with, the fireworks and all of the PR we've gotten on that. And there's millions and millions of people that are hearing about Watertown, South Dakota that weren't before. So I think that our marketing is really working, and I think we've got a really good team and a lot of people working really hard to make that happen.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Julie.
Before we move on, can I go back to the $65,000?
Yep, we can, that would be chamber.
Okay.
So if you want to, if nobody has any more questions for CVB, then
Well,
Julie's
it really
free.
isn't a chamber issue. It's a question to this council, and that is, I think we need to keep the dollars in the budget, but I would like to hold them in a place that we can assign where it goes when we know what level, where we want it to go and need it to go.
So
I'm not.
what are you suggesting that we break it up into more additional categories than what it is right now?
Right now, we say it's the mayor's ad campaign. Well, really, isn't it a city promotion fund? Isn't that what those two equate to? A city promotions, city funded promotions, not CVB, not chamber. Is that fair?
Right.
Okay.
The entire
I would like
city
to see
as
it
a whole.
lumped into one number and then allow us to break it up as we deem fit. Right now, I don't have enough detail to tell me that that's the right thing to be doing, is to giving out $65,000 not knowing what my return is. There may be better places for that to be done, but it should be done in a manner that we know about and that we want and agree to. So I want to keep the 65 in, but who gets that money and how it's used, I think, is yet to be discussed and agreed upon. How we do that, I'm not sure. Maybe
Okay.
you move all 65 up to the mayor's ad campaign and leave it at that. Because then it's not detailing as to where it goes and why at this point, right? That's the
Right, and then I guess I would say, to me, just the title mayor's ad campaign would suggest
change.
that the mayor should have some sort of a play in the collaboration of what that is and where that is and what the message is and what it's saying, and I guess how you guys work out how you want that relationship to be and how you want to have that communication. I guess you can, but again, I think that's probably more conversation so everybody gets
That's
on the same page.
kind of a
on
semantics thing. To me,
Right.
it shouldn't be the mayor's ad campaign. It should be the city's ad campaign.
Yep,
And,
and we can do a name
I mean, we
change.
can rename that account, correct, if we want?
Sure,
That
I
was a
can.
new name for 2017 budget. Is that true? Because it doesn't look like there was a budget for it in 15 or 16.
Right. See, that's when it was all just lumped into one under the chamber. It used to be prior to that, and then it got changed and then we brought a little bit of the detail back in. And so, yeah, if you want to make a motion to not have a chamber budget and to put it all into one ad campaign, and we can even just say ad campaign budget,
And
we
then
can
we
do
can make
that.
those decisions as to who gets that later, correct?
Sure.
It doesn't have to
Sure.
be pegged to, it may
Right.
go to the chamber, but I'm saying without more understanding where those funds are going and how they're used,
But how does the chamber do their planning for
well,
their
then it better
own
get us some
budget?
detail. How they're going, it's our money,
Yeah.
you know? How are they going to spend our money?
I think that we can, I requested a printout of all the expenses that we've paid for, and I think part of the problem in what we see there is heavy on the mayor's ad campaign and light on the chamber so far this year might have to do with how those things are being coded, because the 40,000 does not require a detail, and they've been giving us a detail. And I think we've been seeing a detail, and since it is a detail, maybe we've been assigning it to the wrong number. I don't think it's that they haven't been giving us detail. I don't think that's a fair thing to say, because we haven't been asking for it. I think it's fair to ask for it, but I would be really hesitant to say we may or may not give the chamber this money. I think they need, for their own planning, for their organization, to understand how much money will be.
Well, I think there's a dollar amount. They'll know what that dollar amount is. So they know what they've got to work with. But I think we need to, I agree with Mike, I think we need to have a little say-so in how we divvy that out and what we're using it for.
Sure, but Mike said it may or may not go to the chamber, and
This
that
is-
makes me nervous.
This does not go to support there should be a dollar-for-dollar expense that says, we had $5,000 worth of radio ads, here's $5,000 that came off of that. That is not going to run their operation in any shape or form.
They
It's
have
purely an offset to an expense associated to the promotion of the city of Watertown. Is that correct?
Well, it's, if you're under the assumption that all $40,000 that goes to marketing and advertising,
Versus what? What it's for?
that I wish I could tell you. I wish Megan was here. This is my second day, so I'm a little bit under the gun here, a little bit. But
Tim, would you state your name for the
yes, I'm
record?
sorry. This is Tim Sheehan with Watertown Chamber. Yep. And maybe Glenn can jump in a little bit with what that $40,000 has been used for in the past.
Well, what I'd like to see happen, and I thought there was better documentation coming back to the city. What I would recommend is that, no, I don't want to see us start cutting dollars. Do we need a better accounting of how that money is being spent? Absolutely. And I guess what I'd suggest is that between the finance office, Ledgers handles all of the day-to-day bookkeeping for the chamber, and obviously your office, Tim, that we all get on the same page as far as what that money is being spent for and how it's being documented, what kind of paper trail we're leaving on that. But at this point, I would not want to see us be actually cutting dollars, but we do need a better accounting of how that money is being spent.
Yeah, well, I would agree.
Cutting dollars from the chamber or cutting dollars from the effort of promotion of Watertown?
I'm saying cutting dollars to the chamber. Because we're looking at the chamber for the the use of those dollars for promoting Watertown. I mean, I'm not sure quite what you're saying now, Mike.
What I'm saying is, as I look at $65,000, I look at that as dollars that are going to promote Watertown. Not necessarily ads, but they're in any way, shape, or form, they are dollars to promote very specifically Watertown. And I don't care who does that,
Right,
as long as they go.
And the chamber
as-
has been tasked of doing that in past years, is what I'm
Okay,
saying.
and what I'm saying is, I'm sitting here in this council, and Steve, and granted, Megan's not here, we don't know where those dollars are being spent. So, how do I
It
know?
does take staff, though, like for the farm show and some of those things that we do. It's not just, I mean, that is a person in there too as well, that does that work, that promotes the city, does that, the work behind the scenes.
I think we can get that accounting if we ask for it. We just
Certainly.
haven't asked for it.
Right,
And,
yeah.
I mean, what I've seen so far is quite a lot of detail. And I've tried a little bit to sort it out to see if maybe it was misappropriated, but I don't disagree. I would like to know what that 40,000 is for, so I can see a bill and go, oh yeah, this goes in that box. I'm struggling with that
Well,
right now.
I also want to know if it goes in a box, but I want to know if that box is doing me what we want it to do. It's not just that it goes into a box. I want to know if we're spending $65,000 that is promoting Watertown in whatever manner, supporting whatever it is, and we're getting $65,000 worth of value out of it.
Right, and I think that that is readily available at, all we have to do is ask.
Right, Mindy and Ledgers, Angie will have all that for us. Easy to do.
And I think, you know, just in looking at, if you go back to really what the BBB sales tax can be used for, I don't know that it's appropriate to use for anything other than promotion and advertising of the city on a chamber level, because it only talks about civic centers, auditorium, or athletic facility buildings, including the maintenance, staffing, and operation of such facilities. It doesn't really talk about maintenance, staffing, operations of any other facility or operations outside of the city. So, you know, maybe it's just a two different line items. One is advertising that the chamber does for maybe their members, their businesses. It's up to them to determine whether it's advertising for the farm show, advertising for, you know, some other thing that they do. And the mayor's ad campaign is maybe more given direction from the mayor or city council or whoever you want. What do you guys feel should be, because that should be for the entire city regardless of whether they're a chamber member or not. But the chamber advertising is going to focus on the members that actually pay for those services and for that advertising. So I mean, I'm thinking that all along this has been used to advertise the city, maybe just a little different focus. But again, I think it's not going to be hard to get that detail. I can sure try to get as much of that detail tomorrow, and we can maybe revisit that. If you want to keep the 40 and the 25 in there, we can revisit that tomorrow. But I guess maybe for the sake of time, if there's no motion on any changes, we can just leave it. We can see how much information we get, and if Tim has time to come back, we can maybe revisit that right away tomorrow before we start on any of the other agenda items.
There is another dollar amount that isn't shown in here that Tim and I were struggling to find where it belongs in this budget book, both of us being new. The Kokonan-Kempesca has grown quite a bit, and Tim's been involved. He can talk about that a lot better than I can. He's been involved since the beginning of it. And it's grown so much that it's overtaking the campground. And this year we had a little bit of an issue with that. We could have used the whole campground. And the park department was very helpful in getting that set up. But whether or not those fees have been charged back, I'm not sure. Were they supposed to be charged? And
Yeah.
Mayor, can we defer that? I mean, that's the very next section coming up in our budget, but can we
Well,
defer that conversation?
Yes, it is.
Because it is a separate line item relative to the chamber.
Yes.
So I guess I'd like to, you know, if we need to look at this and get a better clarity by tomorrow night, but I'd like to move on and keep the numbers as we've got them in the proposed budget at this point, Mike, would be my recommendation. But
Tomorrow, because again, I'll go back to it. Our dollars should be spent for the promotion of Watertown and every business in the city of Watertown. Now, chamber-raised dollars can be used to promote chamber businesses. But that's, so we need the detail on that. It's too big a total dollar item for us to not have justification as to what to expect. And if I look down the row here, I don't think we have an idea really what our dollars are used for.
Mike, can I just shed a little bit of light on that? And I don't know exactly, but I think that we're confusing the word advertising, and I think that a lot of that money is for PR. And what that is, you know, shop local. I can remember the mayors doing ads talking about in the holiday season and things like that, and shop local, just different seasonal type things. And in the past, that's what it's, and there's a difference between PR and advertising, I think. You know, we do something that just talks about the bid board and what they do and where the dollars go, just for informative reasons, and I think part of that money is probably also PR. So I just wanted to say that, because I do remember some of those ads being just PR, talking about, you know, what the chamber does, or what, you know, how important it is to shop local in Watertown type of thing,
Right.
that isn't member
But again, there
related.
should be a plan. If
Oh, I
for
agree. I was
$65,000,
just trying to shed some light.
a plan that says, here's how we're gonna spend $65,000.
Agreed.
But in conjunction with that, we give over a quarter, or we give $270,000 to the CBB. Do we get any bids, or do we get anything back from them?
I think we have a good understanding as to how those dollars.
I'm just saying, we're asking for 65, but we're giving 270 without blinking an eye, so.
And
Lincoln and I, because we have the detail as to how those things are most. She
Right.
just shared with us where she's spending some of that money.
Right.
We have two numbers here in front of you, Kyle. One is 25 and one is 60, or 40.
That's Adam.
Or Adam, I'm sorry. That's the two numbers we have. So we have no detail.
yeah. The other thing too that I will add, every March, we've required the CVB to come back with some other external organizations. We haven't probably had it to the level for the chamber that maybe we should in the future, and they can do kind of that same presentation, but they're required to come back and tell us, what have you done? What are your accomplishments? What have you spent with that money, and financially where are you sitting? So I mean, I think we can also ask the chamber for some of that detail too in that same time frame, and that will also give you guys a little bit additional information prior to even the budget process starting, so that you understand where some of this is going and where the plan is, and where their overall plan is to help advertise for the city, promote the city, however you want to say it. To me, it's putting our name out there in whatever way, shape, or form that you guys want to support. And I think they're a support tool for the city because we don't have our own marketing department, and I think that's kind of how they've been used. And it's every year you have an opportunity to make a decision on how you want to continue to use them as a support to promote Watertown in whatever way, shape, or form you want to see that in.
Just a quick summary, so we can move on. I'm okay leaving the money as it is, but I would like to see a follow-up at some point for this year's budget, and then next year's budget, if we could have a breakout just like the CVB did, so it's listed in the program or the thing, then we'll know. But I do want to see a follow-up to this year, which is probably not going to, is Alpha's going to get to us by tomorrow night. And then next year, I'd like to see it in the report.
Good stuff. I would too.
Okay. So, did anybody have any questions on the Boys and Girls Club? I mean, again, it's contractual, and then the $50,000 for the Park and Rec, that has not changed in quite a few years to help them balance their budget as well. Otherwise, we're going to move on to contributions to external organizations. If you look to the second page, the first page just reflects the mayor's proposed budget under the 2018 budget. Under the second page, you'll see for the request of 2018, and I gave you guys an additional handout that you each will have that shows you the requests that came in, and you can see that the total requests were $201,000. There were 2 new requests from 2 new organizations, and then you can compare that to the mayor's proposed budget. And basically, the recommendation is to only fund the Watertown Community Foundation request for the 2 new requests, and that's to help with the downtown art walk, I believe is what they call it. And then to increase the Historical Society to their requested $11,000 from $10,000, and all the other organizations stay at their current level.
I would like to offer a little explanation
Sure.
as to why I didn't recommend funding the Mother of God Monastery. It's not at all that I don't think it's a worthy request. I do think it is a worthy request, but I just feel that making a contribution to a religious organization for their mission or their project is just really a dangerous step to take, because every church has a project that they focus on, and I don't know where we could draw the line. And there are so many worthy projects out there, and they all are hurting for money. And this was really, really tough. All of these organizations are very wonderful and worthy and needed in our community. And I struggled in having to cut money from the budget. And some of these organizations just barely hang on as it is, and really rely on the money that we give them. And I just was leery about moving into that realm of starting to give churches money for their projects.
Where does the request for the $5,000 come in at under the community foundation? What was that for?
The art walk.
All of it's for the art walk?
I believe it's for that sculpture walk to help fund the costs associated with that. I know that the statues have to be insured. I don't know if there is some overall cost to that.
So it all goes to that?
The $5,000 request, I believe, is all going for that endeavor. Yep, there was some seed money that was put in by a couple individuals to start that, and hoping that some donations would come in. I don't know where they are with that, but at this point, they're kind of running low on funds, and they were asking the city to support that continuation of that for the downtown area.
Maybe it's just semantics, but the request that we were handed out here is actually coming from the Watertown Art Walk Incorporated, which leads me to believe that's a separate entity aside from the Community Foundation.
I think the money's being held by the Community Foundation. At least the seed money I thought was being held. Does anybody have any additional information?
The Watertown Community Foundation oversees the funding for the Watertown Sculpture Walk. And the Sculpture Corporation, or the Sculpture, I don't know what you called that, they're located in Sioux Falls, and they facilitate the trade out of the sculptures every year, so that when the new sculptures come in, they organize taking the sculptures back out. And I know that there's costs involved in swapping them out every year. And I also know that the pedestals that they put them on are rather expensive, and they're also, because of the condition of, I've been told on the sidewalk, sometimes they're not solid underneath or whatever, and so there's some structural things when they bring them in that can be quite costly when they bring in new sculptures.
Basically, the letter states that they buy the granite stone mounts and lease the art, also print brochures and purchase signage, and hope to do more to support the walk. They also say their goal is to add at least 2 new locations each year until we occupy all appropriate locations. And so that's kind of where they're trying to get to, and where the extra funds. So, and it says the committee is composed of Joy Nelson Jandenberg and Greg Blow.
Shelley, is this an event that takes place, or is this the placement? When we say art walk, it's not a specific day or an event, it's the placement of the art pieces.
Right, and then they sit up from, is it the beginning of May through like November-ish?
They're up there all year long. And
Oh,
they're
they are?
switched out in May.
In May.
Yep.
Okay.
And the chamber always does a cookout for them on the corner when they bring the new pieces in. And they're commissioned pieces, and some of them they're all for sale. There was one put up at LATI this year, and then the Redland Arts Center has one, and so we went from, I believe, 10 to 13 because Dempsey, they're all sponsored. The CVB is a friend of the Art Walk. We've got 2 sculptures by us that the development company, I believe in the chamber, sponsored before I came along. And then also the bid board has paid to include Watertown on the South Dakota Sculpture Trail in cooperation with the South Dakota Department of Tourism. So we have 4 pages on a website with all of the other sculpture walks in the state that line from the western part of the state along the I-29 corridor and the I-90 corridor with all of the sculptures that are throughout the state. So it's a pretty attractive tour for a lot of people that enjoy art, history, culture, that type of thing, the leisure travelers.
Kelly, is there a way that we can, I mean, our funds really are going to the Art Walk purposefully via the foundation, right? So could we at least add that in here so people know what it's being used for versus just going to the foundation? Because that was, as I read it, I was wondering why are we giving money to the foundation? So.
Sure. Yep.
Do you know is that to help offset just the cost of installation? Is that
I
what
don't
it's
know
for?
exactly what the funds were earmarked for. I do know that we go through a lot more brochures and things like that, and all of the separate societies are responsible for supplying the CVB with a lot of those things. But there's a lot of information that goes out. So, I mean, as it's growing and there's more people coming to, the cost of operating it has gotten to be more, and they're adding a couple of sculptures every year to make it more attractive. I think that there's just costs that are becoming, I'm guessing if they're going to add 2 more sculptures next year, that money probably will go towards the stones, the pedestals that they need to have to sit them on, would be my thought.
Any other questions on the requests or the mayor's proposed budget on the requests?
Do you want to jump back in on the Cook and Compesco, or I can say a couple of words or get Tim involved again on that one?
Yes, I'll just say we figured there was $8,000 for the park to shut down the campground during that time, and so that needs to be added in to the budget, and it didn't get in my request, but I do support that.
But I'm also guessing on the flip side, because that's we're probably understating our camping fee income then too by the 8,000, which would come in from the chamber.
No, because if the chamber didn't rent it, we would assume that all of those camp pads would be rented. I mean, that's a busy time of year. So no,
Okay.
when they did their estimations on the park and rec side, they assumed that they would fill those. So I don't think there'd be any change on that. It would just be on us reimbursing them back for their additional costs.
And that's if it fills. If it rains out and it's half full, we kind of talked with Jay. I think that number was a reasonable number we all agreed on, and it works for everybody.
And this was a conversation that was had at the last Park and Rec Board meeting. I was in attendance at that, and you and Megan were both there, and that's what the Park and Rec Board, I realize they can't promise that to the chamber, but the expectation was that the chamber would receive additional funding from the city for the camper rentals that the chamber would be required to pay.
Correct.
And that, to a point, was subsidized through a contingency for the 2017 Coconut-Kapasska up to $5,000 or whatever the bill was that they had to pay. So does anybody want to make a motion and a second to add that to the request and to the mayor's proposed?
I would do that, up to the 18,000 then, for cooking on Compesca.
Second. I'll second it, Shelley.
Is there any further discussion?
Is that 8,000 a set number then? Or is that just up to 8,000?
Up to 8,000, I think would be probably a fair motion.
So I understand this for a second. historically that we've given the 10, right? So they can spend that whatever way they want. And then anything that was above that was to offset those campsite expenditures, correct?
Well, this 2017 was the first time this became an issue with the lost revenue at the Park and Rec for the campsites that were being used.
Right, but the intention from going from 10 to 18 in the budget now is to account for that change now, right?
Correct.
So we really want to make sure that the additional dollars are an offset to the camping only, not elsewhere, correct?
Well, we put it on Cookin on Compesca in the contributions to external organizations, so they'd be getting 18,000 instead of 10,000. And I mean, do you want
You
to
see
make
it-
a further note in the book?
Well, our
or-
purpose in extending the dollars or expanding the dollars was to account for the camping.
Yes.
Okay, so it should be $10,000 plus whatever the camping fees in. If we want to denote that in our notes that it's $10,000 plus whatever the camping is up to a total of 18, then I'm fine with that. You
And
see what
Mike-
I'm saying?
Mike, what it was is that 10 was for the actual prize money for the participants. That was never to help offset any of the advertising or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's
However,
strictly for-
whatever the 10 is for, it should still be used for that. But
Yep.
anything additional was just to offset the campsite fees, correct?
No, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. Yep. And we can notate that in the minutes and then make sure that, and then I think that's the way that it was worded for the 2017, that it was that up to the 5,000, whatever you guys submitted for your actual costs.
Mm-hmm.
That we would
next day
pay.
or so, yep.
Yep, so you, go ahead.
Okay. Any more discussion? We have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Bueller to increase the amount for Cookin on Compesca plus camp fees from 10,000 to 18,000. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. Was there any other questions, concerns on the contributions?
Just a procedural question. We did not actually have hearings with the organizations like we have had in the past. Is that a fair statement, Mayor?
That's true.
Yep. There wasn't time with the change in staffing. There wasn't time, so we just asked them to reach out and send an email. I think next year, before the budget season ever starts, that should be a conversation. I know there was some conversation last year with how that process comes about, and whether you want that same process to continue, what level of information you guys want to know whether you want to support it or not. I know we've talked about a lot of different things, and I guess now with the new mayor and some staff people, that might be something you want to have a conversation about next year and come up with a process that you guys are okay with, and then everybody kind of knows where to go forward. We were not really prepared for that this year, so.
I do have one question. That increase for the museum, do we know what that is for?
Just operating expenses, they're pinched.
Okay. I just didn't see anything in the letter as to reasoning.
Okay. If there's anything else, we'll move on to the Urban Renewal Fund. As you can see on the first page, we haven't had time to fill out accomplishments, goals, short-term, long-term. As most of you know, there was a different board that was put into place, and they had their first meeting last week, and so they're kind of getting their legs underneath them and kind of learning the process. But in that meeting, a month ago at the Urban Renewal Board meeting, I basically kind of talked to them, and for the past probably 4 years, that special assessment tax that was put onto any businesses, not residents, but businesses within that urban renewal footprint, was suspended. And we've just been going off of fund reserves to pay for things like flowers, banners, decorations, benches, the music that is on the restrooms, any repairs to the volunteer center that the city owns and gets rent from. Basically, by the time 2017 ends, there will be about $10,000 left, which is enough to cover the restroom cleanings, but not anything else. And so the Urban Renewal Board was asked to weigh in on kind of what they wanted to do. They had a couple options. They could request that nothing be done, no additional assessments, and to ask the council to take the costs of the restrooms, which are required to be provided in the downtown area because businesses don't always have their own bathroom, and then anything else, and see if there's another place to put them, or reinstate that assessment to replenish the fund balance, and then they would have a little more say in how those dollars are spent and to what level, and all those dollars would stay in that downtown urban renewal footprint versus kind of competing with citywide dollars. And so last week when they had their meeting, they did have that discussion. Unfortunately, I wasn't there. Kristen was able to be there. But their recommendation to you as a council would be to reinstate that assessment and have the dollars collected within the Urban Renewal Fund and continue with the Urban Renewal Board like we have in the past. And so you can see on both the revenue side and the expenditure side, I added in an estimation for the tax being, or the assessment being collected, as well as putting in a budget similar to what we had in the past. So I guess at this point, I'm not sure if there's urban renewal people here who would want to speak about that, but I guess at this point, ultimately, it takes the city governing body to assess special assessments, and it's up to you to appropriate funding. So if you want to, I'll kind of open it up to some conversation if there's anybody from the public that has any comments on that. This would be the time to make that determination on whether you support that or whether you don't, and then to kind of make a decision how you want this to move forward. And Adam, I know you're a liaison to that.
Yep.
And if you were there last week, if you have anything that you want to add that I missed, or anything from that recommendation, you can sure chime in as well.
Sure. Basically, we met last week, as Shelley said. The discussion is we do not have enough funding to continue doing the projects that we have been doing, including the flowers and the other projects that they would like to see, the Urban Renewal Board would like to see move forward with some possible implementation of, maybe some historical signing, or some other objects that they would like to put in. So the discussion was had, and they were in agreement of adding in the special assessment. And it may not be a long-term deal. It might be for a year or two, depending on what kind of projects they are looking at doing. But they did recommend it so that we have enough money to continue the funding to do the flowers and some of the other items they went through with. And it was one of those things that it might be a year or two, take it off for a year or two, put it back on for a year or two, try to build up some of the funds. It was a significant amount of money. Shelley, do you have that number? What it would be roughly?
The assessment collection?
Yes.
I think when we did our rough, it was around 60,000 would be the total collection amount.
So I believe what they were spending was 23.
Yeah,
So-
we've really pared down, like the The flower watering itself and maintenance, we've put that onto the Park and Rec department, so that's no longer being put in there. And then we kind of pare down some of the other expenses. So we're right now at just under 30,000.
So 1 year's assessment would be 2 years worth of operating. So it might be one of those where it's on a year, off a year type deal, or couple years and then a couple years off. So
And none of this expenditure includes anything additional.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's no additional projects put in here because none were relayed to me. So that would be something, that you would have to talk about with those extra funds and kind of build those into maybe a 2019 budget for some of those special projects.
yeah, they talked about the fund, possibly doing some items, but until we have some money into the budget,
Right.
obviously we can't make any decisions on that.
Shelley, what, I'm sorry, I was actually reading something different when you explained about, what was the issue with the bathrooms? Are they paid for in regards to the cleaning of them by the city now, or is that?
Yeah, but it's always been the city's responsibility to upkeep and maintain. It's not something that we can say, we don't have any more money, so we're not going to continue to have restrooms in the downtown area. I wish Justin was here. It is required. The city is required, and I can't remember if it's through state statute or what, but we are required to have restrooms open to the public in any downtown area. And so that is something that, regardless of whether we had an urban renewal district, whether we had an urban renewal board, whether we assessed any additional funding from this, the city would have to continue to maintain and clean those restrooms and take on those costs. The rest of it, the flowers, the music, the banners, the decorations, none of that is per se required. It's something that has been done in the downtown area to kind of beautify that area and make it stand out. And there's been funds available to do that. So, I mean, that was kind of what was posed to that Urban Renewal Board. Do you want to continue that or not? And their recommendation was to continue with that so that they could have some say in projects and how that money was used.
And
So-
Shelley, like any special assessment, there would be a public hearing before the council would actually start that, correct?
Correct.
When we stopped the assessments, I think it had to do with, it just wasn't a clear direction at the time.
Correct.
So, you don't tax something if you don't know what you can do with the tax dollars.
Correct.
So that begs the question then, how clear is the direction going forward? I understand the idea of building up some funds so you can do some things, but do we have some strategy or some things that we want to do that we need to build those dollars?
There's not even enough money to do flowers next year unless we do this.
Don, to answer your question, I think part of that was with the charrette that was done. That was one of the items that, hey, you should look at doing these type of projects. So there was really no direction until that charrette was done. Now that the charrette is done, we have kind of a game plan. So that's what the funding would be coming in for, is to hopefully tackle some of the public side of that versus the private side of it.
I'm assuming that assessment is based upon the assessed value of the downtown, of the urban renewal district property owners, right?
That is correct.
Was there a good turnout at that board meeting, Adam?
No, it was just the four of us.
I was afraid you were
And
going to say that.
one call in, so.
That was going to be discussed.
Kay, will you please state your name for the record?
Okay, I'm Kay Solberg. There's been a few things stated here that I think historically have not been exactly the way they've really gone. First of all, it's not the business owners that pay this tax, it's the property owners. It's brick and mortar. When you look around the uptown right now, we've got like 20 empty buildings that need to be filled. The flowers are an issue that keep being brought up, and yet when I was chairman of the Urban Renewal Board, the city paid for the flowers, not the Urban Renewal Board. I'm not quite sure why it ended up being that the Urban Renewal Board paid for the flowers when the city pays for all the flowers for the whole rest of the community, and why the property owners that are in the uptown have to pay for the flowers that are uptown. I'm not quite sure where that got shifted into being the property owner's expense. Not that I don't love the flowers, don't get me wrong. I think they add a lot to the whole look of things. I guess my concern, and you addressed it, Sarah, was it says the Urban Renewal District is really sanctioned under HUD. It's a federal district put together for the purpose of taking care of blight and bad things that end up being within the center of a community. We can take down buildings, do those kinds of things. That's what the whole thing was set up for. There is a whole stack of bylaws of which you are supposed to follow when you do these types of things, including what kinds of projects can be used and followed with that kind of a setup. And one is that when you're taxing, tax can be levied against the property owners, not the business owners, the property owners, but it has to be for specific projects. And we always sent out certified letters saying that this is what the proposal was going to be. Your tax amount would be this. And there would be a hearing that you could come and discuss that and get the answers to that. And that's why I was disappointed when I saw in there was no goals, no projects. All of a sudden, we're just being told you are now going to have to pay, in our case, $700. In 4 of the people's properties uptown, that's $1,500 for 1 year. That's a big chunk of money to put back on the property owners that are struggling to make and keep their buildings filled in the first place. As far as, the Urban Renewal has written for a grant. We got a HUD grant when I was on it, and that's when you saw a lot of the outside buildings being painted and the different, what am I going to call it? The
Awnings.
Awnings, yeah. Were put on. And we did a bunch of the road maintaining and the whole works throughout there. But there's been some things that the Urban Renewal Board has done that, again, the property or the business people have not really been asked how we feel about it, one of which is parking. And I can tell you right now, what we've done to parking has devastated some of the businesses that are uptown, having no parking rules and regulations at all.
Okay, I don't disagree with you, but this I don't think is the place.
Okay.
We're trying to do the budget.
Right, but what I'm saying is having 53,000 voted into the budget when that's not taxpayers' money.
There will be a hearing before that tax could be implemented, and you'll get the certified mailing, but they didn't do that, then we wouldn't have that option. So it was a brand new Urban Renewal Board in their very first meeting, and they're faced with lack of money to do anything next year, and even what we've done in the past, which is minimal. So they didn't move to necessarily do the tax, but to give the option for the tax so that there can be a public hearing and the public would provide input and talk about what that money would be used for or not. And the council will act on that later. But right now, it's in the budget. If we don't spend the money because we haven't collected it, that's okay. But if we do collect the money, there's what it is and how it will be spent, which is mostly going for reserve, or about half of it.
And just to answer some of those questions, this is something that when the tax was being collected, this is no different, the process, than it has always been. The budget process has always come before those assessments. Those letters will go out on Saturday, or they'll go out tomorrow. The public hearing notice will be in the paper Saturday. So, it's the same process.
when
It's
is the
basically the
Public hearing.
first meeting in September, is, yeah, because we have to get those notices to the county as well, and we have a deadline to do that in order for them to assess those on next year's taxes. And so the budget hearings always come prior to that process starting. And so even in the past, this is just a way to say, council, are you in favor of this or not? If they are not, the problem is, and is with the flowers, yes. If you, as a downtown area, wanted to get the same flats of flowers that Highway 81 gets and have volunteers plant them, you can sure do that. It was at some point that, the downtown area wanted to add to that. They wanted to have more bigger, more mature hanging baskets, and that took the cost from $3,000 to $12,000. And so that's not something that can be supported in our BBB tax, and so that's at that point that was moved over to the urban renewal funds, and those were paid for that. So that's what I know about that one. But as far as the process, this isn't any different than what we did in the past. And the assessment process will go, because that's laid out in state statute on what has to happen.
Right.
It's just was for the urban renewal board to also support that, because they're the ones that need to make sure that there's a plan, that there's some sort of rhyme or reason of why this is being asked, and I think they understand. And some of those on that urban renewal board are property owners.
Only two.
But they are property owners,
Right.
and
The other
they
three are
do
not property owners.
they do have that same burden to bear. And so I think they've seen the greater good in that. And like I said, I wasn't at the meeting, so I didn't hear what went on. But it was their recommendation to that council to support this process. And if the council supports that process, then we'll go through with that and have those public hearings and go through the process. So.
Okay.
Adam, albeit it was a small turnout, I mean, it was a legitimate quorum at the meeting, though, to transact business?
Yes.
Yeah, we had one call in, but all 5 were there.
It seems to me like we should include it and get through the public input process, is what it sounds like to me.
As long as there's a hearing.
Yeah, there's still gonna be
Yep.
hearing and everything.
Good evening, Jeff Geiser here. I'm not here to talk about flowers or these kind of things. What I'm here to talk about is the lifeblood of my business. And I've already incurred a 13% property tax this year increase. With this $1,500, that's 18%. That takes me to a 30+% property tax burden increase in 1 year. Very difficult to operate and succeed a business. Anything you folks can do to lighten the burden or eliminate the burden would be appreciated. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay.
What do you gotta do, push a button here or something, or ready to go?
You're
Okay.
good, it's on.
Anyway, I think we're all here tonight to, some of the business owners are all here. I'm Jeff Otto from Otto's Repair, but we just don't want anything to get started on this urban renewal. Anything about it, we hear about it, we're just horrified because we've paid the taxes before on it. I think it's an unfair burden to all the uptown businesses. Brick and mortar are already under attack the way it is from the internet, the way things are doing business. We got empty stores up on Main Street already, and I mean, it's just unfair for us to operate when other people uptown and on the highway doesn't have to pay the same business. I mean, you just can't get the money from uptown Watertown because it's just not there anymore. I mean, I just look at the empty stores, and just Ventiques are probably one of the better things that bring people into the and fill the uptown, and I just think it's, you're tapping on an empty fuel tank there, so, just my opinion. Okay, thank you. But I want to thank you for fixing my alley. That was really awesome. I'm not going to complain about the whole meeting.
Okay. We'll move on. Todd, you want to come up? We can do the airport quickly. You're going to have to go to your second tab, about 3/4 of the way back, past the sewer and solid waste department. The airport is one of our 3 enterprise funds. Enterprise funds are a bit different. State statute does not require them to adopt a budget in the same manner that we do on governmental funds. It just basically says that a budget must be adopted on or before December 31 of each year, so that we don't have to have 2 budget processes. I know how much fun this is, but we only want to do this once. We do this in conjunction with our other governmental funds. They have what is called a floating budget according to state statute, where in our governmental funds it is actually against state statute to exceed the appropriated funds given by the governing body. Enterprise funds, because they collect user fees that are supposed to pay for their operations, they have a little bit different rules, but we do keep track of them in the same manner that we have our governmental funds, which is more of a modified accrual and kind of a cash in, cash out type, and have their budgets accordingly. There's 2 parts to the airport. There's just their regular operating, and then there's also what we call the airport AIP. That's the Airport Improvement Plan. That's the federally funded portion. And that's when you'll see the 95 and 5. So those are all the projects that the federal government will cost share with the city. And so at that, I can turn it over to Todd, and he can give you a little overview. Are you finding it yet? I got a finger cramp. That's a millennial. He gets a finger cramp. I just have a book. Nailed it right there. Okay. So if you just kind of want to give a little bit of an overview on,
Sure.
on the budget, and then we can ask any questions.
Sure. So we'll just go through the accomplishments and goals. The accomplishments, the airline has far exceeded my projection anyway, and I believe you guys as well, for the passenger enplanements this year. That's the 2017 goal. The 2018 goal is to bring in some new businesses to expand the airport. 2019 is obviously if we keep going the way we're going, a new terminal will be nice. So we are at a 90% occupancy rate in the T hangars currently. We should have them filled up by the end of this year. Utility costs are there. Building equipment maintenance costs, the total operating revenues, and the expenses. So Shelley has helped me the last 3 years try and balance this budget, and I give her a lot of credit for helping me through this process. We came from about $980,000 roughly a few years back to just about even this year, I believe. So give her a great deal of credit for that. Any questions so far?
I just got a quick one. I just thought of if we do a terminal, if we did build a new terminal down the road, maybe 19, whatever, is there any grant money typically available from the federal government for terminal construction?
The only grants that I've seen so far, and I have, I do want to do more research on this, but the only grants that I see are internal stuff. The internals of it's not the actual building, but the internal components of the building. But I will do more research on that because the feds only pay about 70% roughly on an actual terminal project like that. So we would have to find some more funding. So where are we at here? This is revenues. Okay. So total operating revenues is $892,000, and our expenses are $475,000. For 2018, the revenues are $633,000, and we're expensing $617,000.
Todd, why the drop off in the revenue for 2018? I mean, look at other financing sources where it's coming from, a drop of $275,000. Or Shelley, do you?
Yeah, I can probably answer that. A lot of that is the transfer from the second penny sales tax is based off of the 5% requirement match for our FAA projects. So in 2017, we had the runway project, and we're not anticipating those type of projects in 2018, so that's going to decrease the transfer from the second penny. So that will, these include all of the anticipated revenues, which includes those transfers for those projects.
And then a related question relative to revenues, the fixed base operations, what do we call it out there? I mean, where will that revenue go to? Will that go into this bucket?
Correct.
Okay.
But
So
that's a ground lease and a fuel flowage fee.
Okay.
Is what we get from the
Yeah,
fixed base.
and that comes under the enterprise operating revenue. Anything that we charge basically that is aeronautical in nature goes under that enterprise operating revenue line item. So that's where any of those ground leases for terminals, hangars, that type of stuff goes into there. Farming proceeds, renting the terminal, TSA rents,
TSA and FAA.
and
both.
rent part of that building, and they have to pay a certain amount for that rent.
Is that based on amount of traffic through there, that rent?
No.
It's just a set fee
Correct.
Okay.
Per square foot.
per square foot? Okay.
Todd, what is the publication and recording fee amount? It's increasing by almost 23,000. What is that line item?
Marketing.
Yeah, I think you might want
We
to call
didn't
it
have-
that. I mean, I think it would be a good idea to have that. And I was going to ask a question if we have
Sure.
a budget for additional marketing. For
Sure,
the
we
airport.
didn't, and as you know, we had $4,000 a month budgeted, or that's what you guys decided on. I backed that off to $2,000 a month. Due to the initial burst we had out for the first year, we did a great job. I thank you guys for spending the $4,000. I think we could just shave that back a little bit.
Are we still getting some marketing dollars that ADI is spending directly then
We
also?
are $12,000 a year.
And they're doing that and coordinating that, or do we do that?
They coordinate through me.
Okay.
And
So they're going to
also
keep doing that. They're going to continue to provide those.
Correct. The Chamber of Commerce is also helping us as well, and we do have an external contact as well that did our TV ads and such like that. So Anna Hansen has been helping as well. So that's why that, and we can make a separate line item, right, Shelley, for the marketing?
I can sure try to find one. Yeah. I mean, if it's something that we're going to continue to do, yeah. But most of the time, this is publication and recording fees is really what that's called. So anytime we do any publishing of anything, whether it's a radio ad, a TV ad, it's just traditionally gone into that line. But I guess for the airport itself, if you want to have a separate line, we can sure see if there's one available. I mean,
it's not a big deal. It just, to me, when I looked at that, I wasn't sure what that was either.
Yeah,
Mike asked the question, so.
Yep, and we never created a new account number just because we didn't know if that was going to be a one-time deal, and then it wasn't. But if it's something that you guys want to continue to increase that, and you think it would be beneficial to have a separate line item, we can sure look into figuring out how to find one if there's one available. Otherwise, it'll just continue to go in this line item.
Can we put it as in parentheses marketing?
Exactly. Just change it. Really, just change it on the
we can also
description.
expand on the word pages and you know, and basically say that the publication recording fees is for additional marketing. You can say that as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And you're going to do an air show?
Correct. We're going to try, if you guys approve it. Next line item, equipment maintenance, just to give you a little explanation on that. We do maintain the ARF trucks as well, due to being airport property. So we got a second ARF truck. We've seen our equipment maintenance jump a little bit, so I just want to keep it on under control. Same with motor fuel and lubricants. We also fuel the ARF trucks, and they take a lot of fuel.
So the 15,000 is for maintenance, not for foam. For the ARF, is that for foam for the ARF truck? Is it
15,000? Where are you at?
The
capital
purchases. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So the foam we were using, we have two types of foam. Obviously, we had one truck first, then we got the second truck. The first truck we got, they don't produce the foam anymore, so we need to have a reserve, and we've never gotten to that point with the two trucks. So this is what's going to be a one-time thing. This is one time we get to the $15,000 for foam. We switch the old truck over to the foam that's in the second truck, so we're not mixing if that or no capabilities of mixing the foam wrong. So this is a one-time thing with the foam, and then after this it'll be roughly $1,500 to $3,000 because we have to test that every year. We spray a certain amount out.
Is there a shelf life on that stuff?
There is. I believe it's 10 years, but don't quote me on it. So the air show, obviously you guys talked about that. The natural gas, the computer equipment and software, the machinery equipment, vehicle tires. We have big equipment out there. Tires aren't cheap. We've been kicking this out of the budget now for the last 3 years, and we're in dire need of some tires on a couple of vehicles. They're about $1,500 to $2,000 a piece for tires. So I'd like to just get a couple of trucks, some new tires this next year. And then the parking lot overlay is the last item.
Todd, is that dollar for dollar out of our pocket? For the parking lot work, versus the feds paying a good chunk of that.
The feds don't pay anything on the parking lot. No, this is just ours.
Where's the additional project that came up at the last meeting? Is that in here?
It is not.
That'll come out of 2017. They will do that project in 2017. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so that documentation will be spent.
Is it your thought that the overlay that we do in the parking lot work and such that we've done will be in a usable form if 1, 2, 3 years down the road we do need and allocate funds for a terminal?
Yes.
So
I do have a design, actually a couple of designs, and actually what we would do if we went with the designs I have currently for the new terminal is it would actually shift to the east, and we would actually cut the terminal in half, and we would still utilize the old terminal where you walk in the doors and such, and they would actually start building the new terminal to the east of that while utilizing the old space for the terminal while the new space is being built. It'll just be shifted to the east about 100 feet.
Have you started to see issues with not enough parking out there? And do we have space at some point to add additional parking?
We do. Good question. Thank you. We have additional space to the north of where we added on to this current parking lot. And to answer your first question, yes. We have actually had the old parking lot and the new parking lot. I wish I'd have got a video of it, but it was pretty neat. We had 75% of both parking lots from west to east completely full. So we had the dumpsters in a corner of the parking lot, which probably takes up another 4 or 5 spaces, and we just had that 25% left already since we've built the new parking lot.
Good. That's a good problem to have.
Is there any other questions for Todd on any of his airport budget?
I have a question for you guys. We have had a couple of contractors come up to us and ask us about the parking lot, and they want to shoot us a number for this year. A few of them need a little extra work, to get them through, and one contractor in specific has a concrete plant set up nearby, and they think they can give us a really good number. Would this be something you guys would entertain?
Those are the
this
runway
year?
guys? Is that what you're talking about?
Correct. They have a batch plant sitting right there.
Have you talked
so
to Helms about that at all?
I have.
And
we
what's-
do have prices.
What are their thoughts on
Helms's prices on concrete is a little over $100,000, about $110,000, and rough numbers, they're thinking we can do it for about $80 currently, if we do it this year. In concrete. So I just thought maybe you could entertain going out to bid for that. We don't have to do it if they come in high.
Is this in lieu of this $60,000? Or
Correct. It would be, yes. Instead of doing it next year, it'd be doing this year, allocating this money for this year rather than next year.
And how would that fit into, if we did put a new terminal in, how is that going to affect that? Is there going to be any issues there?
Negative. The new terminal would be, like I said, just to the east of the old terminal. That would actually intertwine as we tear down the old terminal and build the new terminal. It would be right there in that same dedicated area.
All right, but Todd, this says parking lot overlay, so
Correct.
to me, overlay is,
We set this up for asphalt. This is the quotes that we got for asphalt, or the estimate, sorry, from Helms and Associates. Came in with an engineering estimate of $60,000 for asphalt. Now,
But
I've had
overlay.
contractors. I'm sorry. This is for we have the groundwork done. The
so it's
street
really not
department-
it's not really an overlay. Part of it is an overlay, part of it is the new full mat, right?
No. Rob?
In other words, if we went concrete, they'd tear out everything that exists right now?
No.
Okay, I have no
You'd
clue what-
overlay the existing, is that what you're saying, and then put
This-
concrete? All right.
The dollars that Todd has allocated there or requesting is to put a new mat, a full mat on top of what we put out there for millings. Currently, it's just millings spread out as a parking lot, so that would be dollars he'd put towards the mat. The 60,000, I think it was, you showed up there.
Correct.
So that would basically, if he did the $80,000 concrete this year, that would not be needed. That 60,000 next year.
Correct.
I think the word overlay is what's throwing you off, and it's really not an overlay, it's a
Right.
outright paving
A
project.
mat. So you're talking $20,000 difference to go to concrete, is that what you're saying?
That's what the estimates
It's
are
worth it.
right now.
God,
that
yeah,
we've
that's a
gotten.
great, I think
We
that's.
can go out for bids. Like I said, if I could get authorization from you guys, we could go out for bids and just see what they come in this year, and then you guys can make a decision. But we'd have to do it, before the snow
Okay,
flies.
I'm a little bit slow here yet. So the entire parking lot would then be concrete if we went with your suggestion this year?
The new parking lot.
The new parking lot? so-
Correct. It would tie into, it's doubling our space. So if you've been out there before, the old parking lot would be asphalt. Take
Oh.
that and flip it over. The new parking lot tied to that existing parking lot would be concrete.
Ray, if you
And
want
we
to
have the
put,
groundwork done already.
maybe Ray could put my screen up and then we'll,
It's up.
okay, so. Zoom in here. So this is the existing parking lot. And I think what Todd's saying is the new building would go right in this vicinity. There's quite a space between the parking lot and the terminal. And then the new gravel parking lot has been constructed on the backside of this. And if that got paved concrete, both the new concrete and the old asphalt parking lot could be maintained when they build the terminal. And
Life expectancy, you pick up about another third on concrete.
At least.
probably 50%.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. And it would cut down the O&M budget as well. You would take out, obviously the crack sealing and chip, overlays, all that stuff would go away with concrete. Now, we do still have some asphalt surfaces, so I will need some money for crack sealing, but it wouldn't have to be so substantial.
I personally, I think it's a good idea. I think we should definitely take a look at that.
I think we should get firm numbers. I really do. And realistically, shouldn't we get firm numbers
I think
for
what we
fairness to do asphalt also this year?
I
in
think
order
we
to-
should go out, this is to go out to bid. We don't have to take any of the bids. do
Correct, we can,
Right.
we can
I'm saying
reject
to
it.
go out to bid, yeah, let's run for
But
bid. And then, but I'm okay with getting both numbers.
I think you have to in order for us to truly make a decision, is to know what those numbers are, I would say.
As long as we can add in the costs per year after that. You know, I would just make it clear that it's gonna cost us money.
The
every
maintenance
year.
cost for
The maintenance
asphalt.
cost is going to go up with one product over the other, so I just wanna make sure that that's clear.
Right. Is there, I don't know, can we build that into the language for the request for bids on it?
We just did that process on 29th Street earlier this year, and they were so competitive that we awarded the concrete alternative. So there's no reason we can't pull off the same type of scenario with this project.
Can't our decision-making be based on not only the bid cost, but also the longer term?
It needs to be done on a life cycle basis, not just cost.
And when you have alternate A, alternate B, you award it to the low bidder of whatever alternate you choose. So even if asphalt is cheaper,
Right.
you don't have to take that alternate. You can take the concrete alternate if you want. So it doesn't hurt to do that as two alternates. But if you want to do that, I would ask for a motion in a second to go out for bid, since that is kind of completely outside of kind of what we're talking about.
Sorry
But
about that.
well, it's kind of related, but kind of not.
Before I make that motion, where's the money gonna come from?
Because the airport is self-funding as long as it has support from the second penny sales tax. An additional transfer over and above what we have anticipated for 2017, it'll come from our second penny reserves.
And what are those right now? I don't,
Boy, off the top of my head,
will 80K put a dent into it?
no.
I'll make that motion.
Have a
Okay.
motion by Roby and a second by Y. Is there any more discussion?
Just want to clarify now, if we're going to go out for bids, what's this do relative to our 2018 budget work that we're doing right now? You said this is an enterprise fund, which we really don't even have to have a budget. So should we still keep it in there in case we reject the bids? Would that be a recommendation, Shelley?
Right, and basically, if it isn't a project that's done in 2018, then we'll decrease the transfer out to the airport in 2018 because we're going to increase it in 2017. And okay, just so that I get this right, you're authorizing the airport to go out for bids for asphalt and concrete option for the parking lot. Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes.
Any other questions on the budget?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody need a bathroom break? All right. So, let's just take a short break to get something to drink, go to the bathroom, and then we're going to have to pick up the pace just a bit. Otherwise, we're going to have to determine a third meeting. So, whatever you guys want to do.